Council Bill 18, 2025, introduced by Christiana Rigby, Transit-Oriented Development, TOD, Residential Unit Exemptions.
Go ahead. Thank you. CB18 incentivizes housing development in 3 transit-oriented developments in Howard County. The bill aligns directly with our general plan, Hoco by Design, which calls for housing developments in specific areas, including TODs, transit-oriented developments, and specifically in Annapolis Junction and Laurel. By incentivizing housing development, CB18 will create disability income housing units, accelerates new residential units in TODs by exempting them from a multi-year waiting period, and ease housing costs by fixing certain rates. Howard County has an extreme shortage of disability income housing units. Oftentimes, our residents receiving disability income are living outside their networks of support, far from friends, family, parents, and the community that they grew up in. Per Hoco by Design, we want development to occur strategically in TODs, and we know this type of strategic development and housing improvements in housing supply positively impacts communities. You can check Austin, Texas for a real-life example where rents continually dropped nearly 20% in some cases when they took action. And I also would like to call attention to the 2024 pupil yield analysis. If you know me at all, you know I've carried this around for a while. This is from our Department of Planning and Zoning, and it was done with what I'd call the Vicky Cotroneo approach, checking the work with real students from real housing. And it shows that mid-rise and high-rise buildings, like those that would be built in TODs, generate the lowest number of students. We also know that our low vacancy rental rate of 2.8 is a contributing factor to high rents in the county. CB18 incentivizes much-needed development in targeted locations to ensure impacts to our schools are minimal, but impacts to the community are positive. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that DPZ report on our related documents for the bill file?
It is attached to the related documents in the bill, so anyone here can look and see that information.
Perfect. Thank you. We have a number of persons testifying on CB18, and the first 3 are Lisa Markovitz, Ryan Powers, and Joseph Zarafa.
So, Lisa Markovitz for the People's Voice, Ellicott City. I'd like to start by thanking for the accessibility to answer questions and concerns this past week. TOD being located near the MARC station is allowed pretty high density because, at least regarding impacts on traffic, it is assumed that being near mass transit will have less impact. Thus, TOD by definition is geographically allowed in a localized area. That means the area schools need to have APFO to help pace timing of new students. Removing the entire school test seems to be an awfully large incentive for TODs, maybe more than is needed, even if one has a goal of incentivizing them. It would be best to consider not offering a full elimination of the school wait without getting more for that benefit. We understand that the MIHU requirement adding disability units and even pilot programs which can lengthen the time a unit stays affordable are commendable parts of the bill that increase the accessibility to the currently required units. But maybe a portion of reduced APFO waits could be given in return for acquiring more of them. The freezing of fees and any reducing of the wait will offset any funding difficulties that providing more of the affordable units might create. As for freezing of fees, it is hard to try to accommodate balancing growth needs with adequate county public services when what that takes most is money. To freeze these fees indefinitely on large projects with many units is losing too much money the county needs. Please consider a cap on the length of time the rate can be frozen, maybe going backwards from permit time for a maximum number of years. As the APFO Review Committee takes on a lot of these issues, it is becoming apparent that fiscal sources are going to be important to prioritize to ever get multiple competing needs addressed. We went way too long with woefully low fees to start any reduction of them now. We'll just go back to the endless hole we dug ourselves regarding the extremely long time it takes to increase school capacity and improve any other county services. The references to HB 538 do not seem entirely relevant because that state bill suggests APFO easements for low-income projects. TOD doesn't have those types of units. That's why we felt that the largesse of the benefits in CB18 warrant more in return for the county. This year's state APFO possible changes still exempt overcapacity school areas from suggested easing of regulations. Yesterday, I decided to look up more TOD zoning details and pass it through my board to amend my testimony, because when considering the related document of the pupil data sources from different types of units, and you know that comparisons of students from apartments being less than other types of units, my concern was, I wondered, does TOD allow townhouses? Like, how much does it do that? And I noticed that the history of that is really interesting. For a long time, there were townhouses allowed in TOD, but there were a lot of caveats and a lot of limitations. But in 2016, that was amended by then the council, and now TODs by right in dwelling can include apartments and townhomes without limitations. And I only just realized that. So if the goal is to apply benefits in CB18 to apartments only, then that should be another amendment. Although, remember, the number of units will determine the math of whether low numbers of students come, as with high-density projects, the total pupils could still be high because of so many units. But why apply the removal of weights to townhomes if it's noted that they produce way more students? Lastly, regarding the goal to incentivize, please do not apply the benefits in CB18 to existing projects. Thank you for considering these concerns. Now, I have a little extra time, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about my page 2, which is the summary of suggested amendments. Only give some reduced weight and have more for providing, say, 20% instead of 15% of combined MIHU and disability income units. Make the frozen fees going backwards from permit time a maximum number of years. And do not apply CB18 benefits to existing TODs nor to townhouses. If a project has a hybrid system of apartments plus other units, then maybe you could cut the benefits accordingly by percentages. Thank you for considering these things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Ryan Powers.
Good evening. So my name is Ryan Powers. I'm from Glenwood, Maryland. I am testifying tonight as HCCA's newest board member. We believe CB18 is serving us a turducken. This bill seems like an odd amalgamation of combining expanding access to existing affordability with extreme APFO exemption. We note that Councilwoman Rigby's social media ad doesn't make it clear this bill includes an APFO exemption. It is surprising these two unrelated issues should be in the same bill. While we do support the provisions for affordable disability income housing units, we would like a clean bill. By granting APFO exemptions and stymieing school impact fees, you will pile on the burdens of already overcrowded schools. This is not an APFO exemption for one development like has happened in the past. It is 6 different areas concentrated along the eastern edge of the county with who knows how many future developments. And this area gets a 30% density bonus on top of that. This can only lead to frequent redistricting farther away from local communities while also keeping kids in packed schools for years before the redistricting process is complete. This is such a wide-reaching exemption that 14 schools will be affected. There is some overlap in these boundaries, but Councilmember Rigby, 10 schools are in your district. Councilmember Jones has 5, Councilmember Walsh has 4, Councilmember Young has a tiny piece of reservoir, so only Councilmember Youngman is unscathed, except how many years do you think it will be before parents in D5 come to you complaining of larger class sizes and lowered services because of this legislation? Along with the APFO exemption route, Bowman Bridge Elementary School is projected to be at 112.5% capacity. Hanover Hills, 114%. Thomas Viaduct, 118.1%. Patuxent Valley, 118.4%. Councilwoman Rigby, these schools with significant overcrowding are all in your district. High schools are better off in terms of space for now, but the Guilford High School boundary area is in 4 out of 6 of these TOD areas in districts 1, 2, and 3. Hammond High School gets hit twice in District 3. These schools are some of the most vulnerable. Free and reduced meal percentages at these 14 schools, I'll just make a selection. 66.1, 48.4%, 63.5%, 46.9%, 56.4%. That was 2023 data. The numbers go on like that. The county needs time to balance growth with school needs. It shouldn't grant APFO exemptions here. This bill is not a fulfillment of State Bill 538. That bill didn't seek to just thwart APFO, but required actual large numbers of affordable housing for easing it. Do your county leaders want to make APFO into Swiss cheese by spot zoning TOD project favors? This was considered unacceptable for implementing safety issues 2 weeks ago. The county will soon hear recommendations from the APFO Review Committee. Why preempt their hard work? Choose instead to let the process play out. Instead of a bill coming before the council now, which we believe hurts the school system and doesn't guarantee greater amounts of affordable housing get built, let more of our community enter the APFO conversation. If the only possible thing the council can do to provide more affordable housing is to attack the school system, you are an autoimmune disease attacking your own body. Give us real solutions instead of this. Get rid of fee and lieu so that people live in the actual very nice housing units being developed. Help finance housing projects from nonprofits that provide a path toward affordable home ownership. Don't continue to cater to developers while getting so little affordable housing in return. The county's value is worth a lot more than that. We also believe the home buying tax exemptions for public service employees working for Howard County should be expanded. Howard County needs great schools and affordable housing. Dropping school fees and taking local, high-density projects out of APFO isn't it. Please vote no on this bill. Since I have 45 seconds, I want to refer you quickly to the second chart I provided, first chart I provided. Now, we talk a lot about the pupil yield analysis report, even using low numbers. So, first of all, these projects are all
30 seconds.
in the fiscal note. These are current projects. 3 of them are in the school bin, which means if you pass this, they go immediately. The rest are currently planned. So using the estimates and the pupil yield analysis, new students generated without an APFO delay, 595 low estimate, 983 high estimate. That's coming soon if you give an APFO exemption. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, Deb.
Mr. Powers?
Mr. Powers.
Can I ask a question? I'm looking at this chart, and this is the chart that you had in front of us, this one with the gray?
There's
and
2, yep.
Gray, but that was the one you were just explaining?
No, if I didn't staple it correctly, that's my fault. There should be one right below, the first one after my testimony. It says, do you not have it? Sorry.
Okay, I got it. I have it now. Yes, thank you. And it was, could you go through that again?
So in the fiscal note, it mentions all the currently planned in process TOD projects.
Oh, these are the ones that are, okay. And they're at different stages in the process.
Yep, 3 are in the school bin currently, and you can see school waiting bin. You know, 1 is in the first year, 1 is in the 4th year. That's going to be all done in July. 1 is in the 2nd year. Paddock Point, I believe if I remember correctly, it might already be improved. Yeah, so it varies. Sorry.
All right. And are there any that are, I guess if they're on this list, then they're all at some place in the process?
Yeah,
Or-
it's,
Okay,
the only one I would say is Paddock Point, C5K2, and OS Lot D, F25004. I don't know what that means in terms of DPZ because they don't provide the housing units, so it's early in the process.
okay, that does look a little complicated, yeah. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Powers. It's a pleasure to meet you in person.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Powers, I was wondering if you're aware or have reviewed any of the data that shows how housing stability impacts academic achievement for our students.
Not aware of any.
Okay, well, I'm happy to follow up. There's a few
But
things in your
I
testimony
would-
that I
I
don't,
would
please let me
counter that
finish
we
my
have
sentence.
50s oh, I'm
I
sorry.
was just trying to finish my sentence.
Sorry.
I noted a few things. So the 15% disability income units, those would actually be built. So they're not theoretical units. This is a way to actually achieve them. So we have real doorknobs that people can really live in. So that's all I wanted to add, and I'm happy to follow up with additional information. Please go ahead.
Excuse me, I'm a little keyed up. But again, there are 57,000 plus students countywide. This is going to affect 57,000 students countywide because redistricting will have to happen if you end up exempting Apfo. We have 983 students coming on in how many years? The school bin itself, you can look at that. You exempt that. Those are already approved plans. Those are ready to be built essentially right away. So you can add up those numbers. 552 apartments, 212 apartments, 242 apartments, that's apartments. And then there's middle-income housing units that add even more.
Okay, I have already asked that this be on the work session, so if that short circuits questions here, or I have a second vote to put it on work session, but.
No, I'm fine with putting it on the work session.
Okay, Mr. Youngman.
Mr.
Yeah,
Powers, can you come to the work session?
Probably not. Thank you.
That's my concern. I thought you'd
Okay.
probably have a full-time job during the day.
I mean, I think this is just a question, just since you're here representing HCCA, and maybe Stu or somebody comes to the work session, but, you know, Apfo is not a permanent lockout of development. Obviously, it's 4 years. And the purpose of that 4 years is to give the school system adequate time to mitigate, to add capacity, to redistrict, to do whatever it's going to do to relieve that overcrowding that is either existing or projected to happen because of that development that is coming in 4 years. The school system is on record that they are not pursuing capacity projects and they're not going to do redistricting. So what is the reasoning, the justification for this 4-year hold when nothing's going to happen during those 4 years anyway?
So I disagree with that in the sense that I believe, and I think we have a BOE member here that
I'm
can
asking
correct
you
me.
guys.
So the capital budget FY '26 that was approved this year does list schools like Patuxent Valley, Thomas Viaduct. It's in the list. So it's in the list. There
Right,
are.
but those are major renovations where we're adding 100 seats. Those aren't big capacity projects like new schools.
Well, actually, there's an elementary school number 43.
Right, 10 years from now.
So, I mean, we can't keep on adding
We're not adding. School enrollment's going down
based
every
on the
year.
data suggested in the pupil yield report. You will be adding at least 595. And let me be clear. So I said the whole eastern part of the county, except the majority of these happening are in a very small, they're mostly in District 3. They're in a very, very small subset. So you're talking Laurel Woods Elementary School, Murray Hill is eventually going to get hit. Other ones are right there. Hanover Hills. Like, it's not even spread out to 6 transit-oriented developments.
Well, you got those questions just because you're here for HCCA, not because you're here as Ryan. So
That works for me.
thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Sorry, you'll have to excuse me. I am keyed up. So sorry.
It's good to see. Next up, we have Joseph Sarafa.
Good evening. I am Joe Zarafa, and I'm representing the Columbia Social Organization today, here to speak in favor of this bill. For a bit of background, Columbia Social is an organization I started about 2 years ago with the intent to build community for people in their 20s and 30s living in and around the Columbia area. In the last 2 years, we have grown to a membership of over 1,000 people. We have a monthly event that averages over 100 members per time, and we've been featured in the Baltimore Banner about how we're trying to build an organization for young professionals in Columbia. We all know Columbia isn't a town that's attractive to young people to live in. In fact, we get rated one of the worst places for singles to live in, I think, year after year. But young professionals do exist here, and the members are growing. A lot of employers are in this area with large focuses on young professionals. Think Howard Community College, the school system, the hospital, the NSA, and Johns Hopkins down the road. A lot of our members come from across the country moving here. We've had people from Hawaii, California, Florida, North Carolina, New York, all moving to Columbia for jobs, bringing income and tax dollars along. A lot of these people can only live here because of new housing projects that have happened over the last couple of years, including apartments in the town center area and other projects throughout the Howard County area. When discussing the future of Columbia, people get excited hearing about the potential for the Lakefront Library, the Meriwether District, and the entire downtown Columbia Master Plan. At an event we hosted last week, the conversation of walkable communities, transit-oriented development, and housing came up. Columbia Social members are big supporters of anything that brings more housing to Howard County. Maybe it's due to the fact that a lot of our members can only live here because of those projects that have happened in recent years. Everyone that comes to Columbia Social, they want an opportunity to make Columbia their home. They want an opportunity to make Howard County their home. They want to become members of the community, and they want an opportunity to own a house in this area. It was commented that Columbia, the second largest city in Maryland, has no public transit to get into two of the largest metro areas near us. There's no easy way to get to DC for jobs. There's no easy way to get to Baltimore for jobs. A few weeks ago, I went to Reston for work. I took a bus from the mall into the city, then took a 10-minute walk to the metro system, and then another hour-long metro ride out to Reston. That sucked. All this to say, I'm here speaking on behalf of myself and the entire Columbia Social Organization to say we support anything that brings more housing to Howard County, that brings housing at a faster pace and makes housing in a method that is walkable. Howard County is very car-dominated. We want opportunities to have walking centers. Don't have to drive to work, don't have to drive to our shops. I'll say I live in town center. My wife and I walk to groceries on Sunday mornings. It's fantastic to not have to get into a car and drive to complete normal errands. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Dana Soar, and behind her, we have NJ, Kevin Shin, and Melissa Rosenberg.
Good evening, Chair Walsh, Vice Chair Jones, and council members. I'm Dana Soar. I've been a resident of Howard County for 40 years. I live in Columbia, and I am also the Deputy Director of Bridges to Housing Stability. Tonight, I'm here to express Bridges' support in favor of CB18, which would promote the development of transit-oriented development projects, or TOD. As Councilmember Rigby completely spelled out. And I will save a little bit of time here because I understand there are like 35 or so people behind me. I just want to second some of the things that Councilmember Rigby mentioned about multifamily development as having much less of an impact on our county schools, which I understand are a concern for parents in the room here and out across the county. The zoning in TODs really dictates that these will be multifamily projects. It's a minimum of 20 units per acre. That's really the only kind of project that makes sense for the landowners and the developers from what I understand. And so I think that we can recognize that there will be a minimum, we should recognize that there will be a minimal impact on our schools from these developments. And at a broader level, we've been talking about affordable housing in Howard County since 2010, and none of it showed up in Plan Howard from what I could see or understand. And starting from the deliberations around Hoco by Design, the update of our general plan, which began around 2019, 2020, some of the early planning. We're at 2025. The council passed the updates in October of 2023. We're still waiting for the review of Apfo. When is comprehensive rezoning going to happen?
Oh, Mr. Soar, know your audience.
Not anytime soon. We have a council election in 2026, so when might that even happen, that we get around to rezoning? 2027 at the earliest. And we've been talking about this problem in our community since 2010. So any development of new housing is good development by our book, especially in zones that are close to transit, that serve people efficiently, that are walkable communities, less car dependent. This is the right kind of development that we should be doing in Howard County. And I want to skip down to a provision that has been of this bill that has not been touched on in much detail yet. And this relates to the incentives for housing for people with disabilities. It's estimated that nearly 8% of county households have at least one member with a disability. And that percentage is definitely going to rise as more of us age into the older adult categories, as we call seniors here in this community. CB18 seeks to address the shortage of disability housing by including a tax incentive for projects that include DIHU. That abbreviation was kind of skipped over quickly. That's Disability Income Housing Unit. For those who aren't aware, DIHU homes are reserved for households that have a disability and earn below 20% of area median income. How much is that, you might ask? Well, for a single-person household, that means income around $18,000 per year. For a two-person household, it's about $20,000. The rents for DIHU are set by code, and they range from about $500 up to $750 per month, depending on the unit size. At those rents, people living on Social Security disability income, and we have them in Howard County, can afford those homes affordably. It works out to about 30% of gross income spent on rent. But with rents that low, landowners and developers aren't going to include DIHU homes in the projects without some kind of incentive. That's the only way you get affordable housing in the United States. We're a capitalistic country, and incentives are needed
30 seconds.
to promote this type of development. As proof of the statement, there's one DIHU in all of Howard County, one. So we support this bill for that reason, as well as the fact that it will deliver more affordable housing, which we're desperately in need of in Howard County. Thank you, Council, for your service. Sure.
This is the council that worked through whatever the last comprehensive plan was called. And this is the council that did so on a really onerous schedule in our part-time lives, additional to a legislative docket and a budget docket. And we did that with the promise that we would enter into comprehensive rezoning before our second term ended. So it is by no fault of the five of us up on this dais that we did not undertake that. And I don't think it is at least a majority of us who agree with, I think, an admission now that that's exactly what's happened, is we're waiting for new people to be sitting up there before we continue that effort. So
And I apologize if my words seem like a scolding. That was
It's
not my intent.
it's
I know that you commiserate.
yes, okay, good, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's true. NJ is next, followed by Dr. Kevin Shen. Is NJ virtual? So we do not have him, or her, or them. Okay, last call for NJ. That's what, right? That's what my list says. Okay, then we're on to Kevin Shin, followed by Melissa Rosenberg and Jackie Eng.
Thank you, Council. Hi, my name is Kevin Shin. I'm a resident of Ellicott City, and I'm here to support CB18 and the need for transit-oriented development and accessible homes for the disabled community. Home prices are skyrocketing in Howard County and Maryland. We rank 43rd in the country in housing affordability, and the underlying reason is our inability and refusal to build homes, as Governor Wes Moore outlined in the legislative session this year. This is a modest bill, but it will have a positive impact in increasing our supply of homes for Howard County residents, as well as giving incentives to home builders to create more accessible homes and inclusive communities. When somebody buys an electric car, we applaud them for decreasing their carbon footprint, as we should. But shouldn't we also applaud someone if they choose to take the train every day to work in the city? taking the train is actually significantly less emitting than driving an EV every day. As a country, we've spent billions on EV development and promotion. This bill, in fact, costs the county nothing. Actually, it would even increase the income and property tax base. On top of that, we let our county residents take advantage of our public transit infrastructure. Sounds like a win-win-win to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Melissa Rosenberg.
Good evening, members of the County Council. My name's Melissa Rosenberg. I'm the Executive Director of the Autism Society of Maryland, and I'm a resident of Silver Spring, Maryland. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Autism Society and in support of CB18. This bill would create disability income housing units in transit-accessible areas, accelerate the development of new residential units in transit-oriented developments by exempting them from a multi-year waiting period, and ease housing costs by adjusting certain rates. So that's the official kind of definition, but I wanted to kind of get to the human aspect of this. One of the most frequent calls we get in our office is the need for disability housing. A parent concerned that what's going to happen to their young person when they're no longer able to take care of them. We're getting calls from siblings who are now taking over the role of caretaker. Disability income housing is very hard to find, low supply, waiting lists, not only in our county, here in Howard County, but across the region. And it has a very strong impact on the person who would like to be more independent, who would like to build their self-esteem, and I think, over time, in a way, it ends up being less expensive to allow somebody to be independent. For the family, knowing that somebody has a safe place to live and an ability to go on and live, again, an independent life. According to the Autism Housing Network, 75% of autistic adults say their biggest concern when securing housing is affordability. We spent 12 years developing a similar concept on a very micro level here in Howard County, Patuxent Commons. You guys are very familiar. It addresses a growing need for affordable, accessible, and inclusive housing for adults with disabilities. It was designed with this community-focused setting that also supports families and seniors. It's conveniently located near a transit line, shopping sidewalks, businesses, and opportunities for meaningful community connections. I'm sorry, long day. It's so important. The majority of the adults in our community, in the autism community, do not drive. And they have low incomes due to unemployment, underemployment, or difficulty earning enough to afford market rate rents. They rely on public transportation, which is difficult here, rides from family and friends, and services like Uber and Lyft if they can afford them. Many continue to live at home even after completing high school or college, and they're entering the workforce. They need access to affordable transportation and housing that supports their rights to independence, so they can work, attend school, engage in social activities. It makes sense to offer them these opportunities. In October 2022, there were nearly 6,000 students in special education in Howard County, and of these, approximately 59% had learning disabilities, autism, developmental delays, or intellectual disabilities. 27% were in high school. And so that translates into 950 high school students transitioning into adulthood who will require support in areas like housing. So we're incredibly grateful for the terrific work that's done here in Howard County and all that you've supported. And we encourage you to please support CB18. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up is Jackie Eng, followed by Pamela Beck, Fran Lepresti, and James Cecil.
Good evening, Chair Walsh, Vice Chair Jones, and council members. On behalf of the Howard County Housing Affordability Coalition, it's my privilege to testify in support of Council Bill 18. The coalition strongly supports the bill's intent to increase the supply of disability income housing units, DIHUs, at TODs, enabling people with disabilities to afford to live near and access public transportation. We anticipate that clarifying the definition of MIHUs to specifically name DIHUs will better inform developers early in the development process that they can choose DIHUs to meet their affordable housing obligation under county law. The coalition also supports CB18 streamlining of county local approval processes to align with recently enacted state legislation, SB 538, 2024. For TOD residential new construction, the bill establishes and retains a school surcharge rate at the time of submittal of the sketch plan and exempts TOD residential units from the Apfo school capacity test. The coalition offers two suggestions to enhance CB18. First, we recommend that the bill embrace a recommendation of the Housing Opportunities Master Plan and adopted in Hoco by Design General Plan that 10% of new affordable units be accessible. This would be particularly useful for DIHUs at the TODs. Second, we suggest that a pilot be available for developers providing DIHUs at a percentage less than the 15% currently in the bill. Given that the rent received from a DIHU is significantly less than that received for an MIHU, receiving 15% DIHUs may make a project financially infeasible. If the percentage is maintained, the pilot should be calculated to ensure the development remains financially feasible by offsetting the difference in revenue between an MIHU and a DIHU. Thank you for the opportunity to provide these comments. We ask your support of CB18. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pamela Beck, followed by Fran Lopresti, James Cecil, Regina Lee, and Laura Wisely.
Good evening and happy St. Patrick's Day, members of the Howard County Council. I'm here to testify in favor of CB18. My name is Pamela Beck, and I have been a resident in Howard County for 47 years. I have two children that attended Howard County Public Schools in Columbia. My older daughter was always a member of the Gifted and Talented program throughout her education. However, my son, who lives with autism and insulin-dependent diabetes, had a much more challenging time getting through the Howard County Public School system, especially at that time when resources were limited. I'm pleased to say that he did graduate with a diploma and ended up working for 20 years at the Howard County Public Library in the circulation department. He loved being a part of that community and was passionate about his job. I spent many years on the board of directors of the Howard County Autism Society, which has been renamed Autism Society of America, Maryland, America too. As my son grew older, it became evident to me that there was a need for affordable housing for people with disabilities. I wanted my son to be able to live as independently as possible, no matter what challenges he faced, and speaking with many other parents, they faced the same issues. Luckily, and through a lot of hard work, my son moved into an apartment with assistance 11 years ago, which was not very common at the time for many individuals with disabilities. In fact, many parents and their kids visited my son to see how it went and how it was going. This prompted me to create the Housing Committee at the Howard County Autism Society at that time and continue on the task force for the Patuxent Commons development. Speaking for many, we will always be very thankful for the efforts made by all the members of the Howard County Council for making this project happen, and watching it rise on Cedar Lane and Freetown Road is a dream come true. But for now, it's time to look beyond Patuxent Commons. For those with disabilities, income opportunities are challenging.
Many are not capable of driving a car, and social interactions are often difficult. The concept of mixed usage of moderate and disability income housing
30
units
seconds.
continues to be needed. What made Patuxent Commons so well placed is having it near shopping, medical facilities, as well as having convenience of public transportation right outside the property. For those that cannot afford or are unable to access places, this bill, CB18 2025, has been proposed, will ensure a more inclusive and accessible community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Fran Lopresti.
Hello, council members. My name is Fran Lopresti, and I live in Columbia, Maryland. I'm here to support CB 18 2025 concerning transit-oriented development, or TOD zones. I have been a longtime advocate for age-friendly policies and affordable housing in this county, and I am testifying as a nearly 50-year resident of this county. This bill seeks to include disability housing units within the definition of MIHU and to incentivize the inclusion of these types of units in TOD zones. The bill is consistent with the 2024 State Bill HB 538, which encourages multifamily housing near public transit. It is also consistent with Hoco by Design, or our county general plan, as well as the Route 1 corridor plan. It is also consistent with the age-friendly Howard plan, since many of our disabled citizens are also senior citizens. Everyone in this room knows we are very short on housing in this county for workforce, moderate income, low income senior, and disabled housing units. I won't go into those statistics, but I will say that we have created DHI units in the single digits over the last 5 to 10 years, and we need to catch up. And that includes the ones that are in the works right now. I would like to add an amendment to this legislation to add 15% of senior housing to this TOD projects and eligible for the pilot. We are giving a great deal to the developers, and I think we need to get a little bit more back. Seniors also like to be near public transit and amenities, and multifamily housing for this growing population is desperately needed. If we are going to provide incentives to developers, let us try to make a dent in several types of needed multifamily rental housing units. It should also be noted that DIH units produce very few students, school-aged children, and senior housing units produce zero. I would like to make one more plea. I have talked to at least 2 of you and the administration about the need to adopt the updated Universal Design Guidelines from 2006 developed by the Age-Friendly Housing Work Group, and we need an update of the Accessibility Building Code. I would like to see these TOD projects use those updated codes as opposed to the ones back from 2006, if possible. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ms. Lopresti. For the bill sponsor, I don't think TOD allows age-restricted adult housing right now. Is that right?
That's correct, but I'm certainly open to exploring that more.
You need a new,
It would be a ZRA, I think. It would have to
Okay.
go through that process, which couldn't go through this process at the same time.
okay.
But I think we should, LV Director Semino will be there at the work session, and that's something that we could talk about how to do a preference for or something along that line.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Mr. Cecil.
Good evening. All right, so thank you for this. I am here to support the intent of CB18, and I do so as the parent of a teenager with autism, and one that wonders what his future will look like, but also how much more the disability community within Howard County is expected to take. Seeing what HCPSS is going through, what they continue to do, even the really disheartening progress of the report that is supposed to help them do better, but also everything that leads to some of the problems that are going to impact this bill when it comes to a commitment to school construction, being proactive in their capacity needs that they've been permitted to be very comfortable with for far too long, including not being aggressive in P3s and looking at, when we started those discussions in 2021, we could be looking at the same situation as Prince George's County with 6 to 8 new schools, 6 new schools open now, and 8 new schools open within the next 2 years. They will see 14 schools within about 4 years, and their county is positioned to grow as a result of that. Here in Howard County, growth is forever connected to school capacity. These TODs were developed with intentionality and included with reason, to then see that, we can never realize that there's going to be a problem as, school projections show enrollment is predicted to decline based on the aging out of the county. But at the same time, we have a lot of things we need to pay for as a county coming up. And at some point, there's a reality that we don't have to like or agree on how we will grow just yet, but there has to be an understanding that we are going to need to grow as a county to keep this up, or we're going to have to bear the burden of that expense with the existing residents. Rarely see a county that is shrinking and thriving at the same time. Rarely see one that is shrinking and finds a way out of it before they hit rock bottom and do that. We will become a county of blight, or we will become a county of privilege only that is exclusive instead of inclusive. So with this, I would say,
30 seconds.
thank you, looking at how to work with the intent of this. There's an extreme shortage of housing for those with disabilities. These are the same communities that have lack of access to education. Housing should be just as fundamental to this community as education. The county is currently failing in both regards. So finding a way to do it, if there's ways to make it better, I hope that you will try to do that. There's not been spending elsewhere to offset this, nor an appetite to find that revenue either. So, thank you.
Thank you. Regina Lee, followed by Laura Wisely, Brent Lovelace, and Laura Meadow.
Hi, good evening, Regina. You've been elevated. Feel free to unmute yourself and begin your testimony when you're ready.
I'm ready. Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Good evening, Howard County Council members. My name is Regina Lee. My husband and I are members of St. John Baptist Church and have lived in District 1 in Columbia for 10 years. I am a differently abled 69-year-old Black female who uses a wheelchair for total mobility. I'm giving my testimony today in support of CB18-2025 because in October 2024 to April 2014, I was a member of the Transportation Planning Board, Access for All Advisory Committee with the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. So I'm very familiar with TODs. One of the strategies that came from this committee, and the development was the TOD in Rhode Island Avenue in Washington, D.C., and Prince George's Mall area in Prince George's County, Maryland. Under the topic of transit-oriented development, residential unit exemptions, I'm in support of 1, tax incentives for disability housing, DIHUs. Number 2, the exemption from school capacity tests. Number 3, rate freeze for school surcharge. Number 4, addressing the housing need as it relates to affordability and not necessarily accessible, but using the correct term, ADA compliant. I am amazed that developers are not taking advantage of tax incentives and building more DIHUs. This would surely allow me and others in my age, economic, and physical situation to own or rent a home with the proper modifications. My current apartment is quote unquote accessible at the front door, but in no way ADA compliant. And since my husband and I are not getting any younger or stronger, having the ability to utilize every inch of my home from my wheelchair is becoming less of a want and more of a necessity. How much longer will my husband physically be able to transfer me 6 times daily just to bathe? People of all ages are becoming physically dependent on certain home modifications due to accidental
30
illness.
seconds.
Let's ensure people of all income levels, abilities, and age ranges can afford to live, work, and play in this community. If the county council, developers, and all of us don't find creative ways to support its residents, Columbia in the next few years will still be in the top 10 ranking. And that is one of the best cities in America to live in. It is one of the worst. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Laura Wisely?
Hello, I'm Laura Wisely. I live in Elk Ridge, and I'm representing Elk Ridge Community Alliance. We are opposing the school exemptions part of the bill for TOD. High-density housing in the east has been the answer to funding the county, which increases the population in the east. Yet the fewest resources are located in the east, long after developments are established. And there's more in the pipeline. Whether you or DPZ feel TOD does not produce students, this is not what we feel. We feel the impact of overdevelopment as a community. Long bus rides, increased need for police presence, our library's too small, our fire station, community space is too small, our schools are filled, Patapsco State Park maxes park admittance on hot summer days, and cars park along Route 1 in dangerous situations in order to just get a dip in the water and enjoy some outdoor time with family. We question data that supports the apartments in our region yield low amounts of students because we see a busload of kids get on a bus from apartments, and we see more than one busloads from several of these communities. TOD is successful when it is in partnership with multiple stakeholders, such as schools, businesses, social services, fire and police, and transportation services. Comprehensive collaboration is essential in a TOD to ensure complete communities, to decrease reliance on vehicles, and aid in community services all within a small footprint. But traveling up and down Route 1 makes it apparent of what adding dense housing without ensuring complete communities looks like. It's piecemeal. These TODs, what you're imagining, is not, we already have our TODs. It is not accessible. There is nothing that they can walk to. There is no grocery store. There is no bakery. There is no school. There is no amenity that is accessible or walkable. To get on a train to where? And so in our latest proposal from Corridor Square, which is in the TOD, just told us that the parcel that they reserved was going to be yet another gas station, and a convenience store and a car wash, which there are already 2 on the same block. That is what we have, gas stations and nail salons. Present us ideas that make TOD work for a community in our position. This legislation does not. Elk Ridge Community Alliance does not trust that more dense housing solves the county's problems. As the model we have been allowing, high-density housing has produced the largest growths in students and socioeconomic need in our area. Guilford Park will be the largest high school in the county next year, and it will have historic number of students in need. We have high needs and lack infrastructure, social services, transportation, safety, walkability, access to groceries. How should we trust you that this is the answer? We are not against development. We want disability housing. We are against lack of comprehensive planning without infrastructure, lack of promised commitments to communities, and especially lack of promoting generational wealth. Affordable housing continues to be defined as apartments for rent, but building and selling rental properties does not help those in need generate wealth. We want a path to home ownership for those in need. We want complete communities so that we can adequately care for our community. ECA is bearing the disproportionate growth and lack of amenities to support our community. We cannot support abolishment of a schools test. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Brent Lovelace, followed by Laura Meadow, Mandy Heinel, and Wells Obrecht.
Good evening. My name is Brent Levis. I'm the chair of the PTA Council of Howard County Legislative. In 2021, we saw CB7 raising the heights of buildings in the rail corridor from 100 to 180 feet, followed by House Bill 538 recently, prompting the county to raise density on that an additional 30% in some of the most overcrowded, socioeconomically challenged school attendance areas. This bill seeks to incentivize and expedite residential development at the direct expense of children by allowing intentional overcrowding. The PTA Council of Howard County unanimously voted not to support this bill as written. It is not a reflection of disability housing versus education. It is simply another factor eroding adequate educational facilities in Howard County. The public has been provided materials to explain that there will be little to no impact. Yet if that were the case, the exemptions from school overcrowding provisions would not even be necessary to implement here. If just one student triggers an overcrowding threshold, seems like an extreme item. Keep in mind, elected officials can be determined by as little as one person's vote as well. Since I have a minute, I'm a little surprised. I saw the attached documents to this, and that school report that came from DPZ, in the initial headers of it says it was written specifically for the APFO committee. What do you know? I'm on that committee. You know what we saw? We saw a cherry-picked version of that where only the slides that reinforced the position of development solves all things were provided. The actual report is now publicly available, but not in the location that it was intended to be. I would also like to address, during the most recent APFO committee, we heard from the school board, not only are they initiating redistricting, which they're accused regularly of not doing enough, but they also had an attendance increase of over 300 since the beginning of the year. That's not significant compared to 1,000 that we used to have, but that is a sign that we are not in a flat, indefinite scenario. As far as capital projects proceeding, they are in the long-range master plans, but you all know very well from all your years of doing budgetary things, this is more for the audience listening. The school system asks for what it thinks it can get or is told what it is get, not what is necessary to actually provide adequate public facilities overall. We have hundreds of trailers to verify what I just said. There's a gag order in a state bill, 538, that restricts us to 2 public meetings on projects in the near future in the TOD area. I don't know if this counts as one of them. It is very restrictive and really not in the spirit of public process, but I think we should take that into consideration. If this is one of the only 2 public meetings that we can have over this topic, I think it's very important that we find a way to meet our objectives and meet them without doing it at the expense of the children. Thank you very much.
Mr. Levis, who made that presentation to the Apfo committee?
Usually, I won't
About
swear
the-
to it. Usually there, Jeff Brano represents DPZ.
And how did your office come to acquire it?
We were meeting with community members, and someone asked if we'd seen the report from that meeting, and I hadn't, so I emailed Department of Planning and Zoning and asked for the report.
I'm just looking in the APFO binder. It could have been in some obscure email, but it definitely is, there was a difference between what's provided for us in the APFO committee versus what you see in the attached documents here this evening.
Yes, and I certainly cannot, as you are aware, that is not, the council does not run the APFO committee. But I can say that the task force that Councilmember Young and I both serve on for House Bill 1450 that is seeking to really look at how do we find revenue solutions for our schools, that this report is also publicly posted there. So again, I agree that it should be with the APFO, but I can only post it where I have access to post it. And so I really do appreciate you sharing that. I'm sure many of us will be following up with the Department of Planning and Zoning regarding that.
I appreciate it, and it also just reiterates, we're working at the same problem from multiple levels, and there does need to be a goal of working toward a solution as the main objective.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lovelace. Yes, thank you, Ms. Meadow. Next up, we have Laura Meadow, followed by Mandy Heinel, Wells Obrecht, Karina Fisher, and Stephanie Mummert will close us out on CB18.
Well, good evening, all of you, and thanks for having us here to talk about all your bills. I'm Laura Meadow. I'm representing the League of Women Voters of Howard County, and we favor Bill CB 1825 because for many, many years, for decades actually, we've supported efforts to ensure an adequate choice and a suitable living environment within the economic reach of all people of all ages and abilities in choosing a home. And we support diverse housing types that provide an increased amount and percentage of affordable units, particularly in this county, including both low-income and moderate-income units with additional housing available designated for seniors, disabled individuals, and families. All members of our community deserve a safe, comfortable, and affordable place to live. And I taught for 20 years in our schools, and if you've got kids who are coming to school from the hotels on Route 1 because they're homeless, you know that it's a problem and how much stability in their home life affects everything that happens in schools. The League also supports building housing in areas with robust public transportation networks, and we'd like to have more of that in Howard County, which allows residents to forego the use of private vehicles, particularly when they can't drive. And the League of the U.S. has, for decades, supported public fair housing laws everywhere. And so it makes perfect sense to us to remove barriers that prevent the expeditious construction of badly needed moderate income housing units, disability housing units, and hopefully senior housing. It also makes sense to streamline and expedite the approval process to construct those units, especially in areas of close proximity to public transportation networks. In future legislation, we would also encourage erasing the distinctions between senior, disability, and moderate income housing units, knowing that those are federally designated and funded, that these categories are not mutually exclusive and any one person can find themselves in all three categories at the same time. Segregating where people live based on age or ability is discriminatory, and it is as discriminatory as is segregation based on any other factor like skin color, or ethnic origin, or socioeconomics. Fair housing practices based upon race or income should also be extended to fair housing based on age and ability. If that's a goal, recognizing that other things have to happen in order for that to happen. And we know that when we put roadblocks in the way of development and we restrict development, we have restrictive zoning and we have all these tests that we have right now a chokehold on development in this county. It's ground to practically nothing in the last couple of years. We also know that that does nothing but increase the cost of housing. It increases the cost of housing that's built and increases the costs of rents. I hear from young people who say their rents are running almost half of their take-home pay for their own place. And they're beyond and young people, I mean under 40, who are beyond the age of having a room in a shared house. To further the goal, we encourage consideration of and so to further all this goal in the development, we also encourage consideration of adopting universal design for living and construction of all of these units, because that expands the usefulness to the entire community. A senior individual is going to age into doesn't have to move if they need to be in a wheelchair for a while. And it would increase the return on investment of public money used in these projects. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
Why keep turning it off? Ms. Meadow, do we have your written testimony?
I emailed it to you.
Okay. I am admittedly confused about this universal design.
We'll be happy to come. meet.
Oversight, yeah.
Meet with Fran Presti.
Yeah, I already highlighted your testimony, Ms. Presti. Next up is Mandy Heinel, I see.
Before she begins, Chair, if we can clarify, we have two people signed up for the GCP junction, and we just needed to know, were you taking the 5 minutes, or was
We
Wells?
actually thought both of us would get 3 minutes, so I'm happy to give Wells the 5, but I don't think either of us will actually need it.
Awesome, thanks.
Yes, we will spare you. I think most of it has all been said. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the council. My name is Mandy Heinel. I'm an attorney with Saul Ewing, and I'm here this evening on behalf of the owners of the Annapolis Junction Transit-Oriented Development in support of Council Bill 18, 2025. In just a moment, you'll hear directly from the owner on what this legislation means for Annapolis Junction and how it will make this project a reality. Big picture. This legislation breaks down barriers to affordable and accessible housing in Howard County. It provides developers with much-needed certainty, giving them the ability to obtain financing, expend funds on things like engineering and architecture, and allows them to take the necessary steps to build affordable and accessible housing in Howard County. CB18 2025 is a direct reflection of Hoco by design. I brought a copy of the relevant chapters, which I've shared with most of you, which specifically call for the concepts outlined in this legislation: incentivizing disability housing, targeted changes to APFO for accessible and affordable housing units, and certainty regarding fees. Hoco by Design recognizes the need to evaluate student generation yield by the housing type, and DPZ concluded in their pupil yield report, as we've said tonight, that of all styles of housing, multifamily housing, which is generally favored in TODs, produces significantly fewer students than other housing types. But I'd really like to highlight two excerpts from Hoco by Design that speak to the motive behind and the opportunities created by this legislation. The Housing Opportunities Master Plan recommends the county look for opportunities to grant automatic or limited exemptions to incentivize affordable, age-restricted, and missing middle housing developments. Accordingly, the county should evaluate targeted changes to APFO to support growth required to improve housing affordability and accessibility. One implementing action in Hoco by Design is that the county should provide incentives related to the development process, such as exemptions from school requirements, inadequate public facilities ordinance, or other means of reducing regulatory barriers. This is precisely the proposal before you, nothing more. Transit-oriented developments align with local and state smart growth priorities and expand housing opportunities for all. And with only 3 TODs in the entire county, this bill is extremely narrow in scope. It has a finite and measurable impact and provides an incredible opportunity for affordable, accessible, and transit-connected housing to Howard County residents, including the creation of hundreds of affordable units and accessible units and tens of millions of dollars in much-needed revenue. Thank you for your time and consideration of this legislation. We ask for your support. 3 minutes on the dot.
All right. Wells Obrecht.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the County Council for the opportunity to testify tonight in favor of Bill 18, 2025. My name is Wells Obrecht. I am president of Obrecht Commercial Real Estate. We are a small development company based out of Baltimore, Maryland. Our project for the last 20 years has been Brewers Hill, which is the redevelopment of historic breweries and brownfields property. This is our first venture into Howard County. The specific project that we are working on here is the demolition of an existing office building and the construction of 650 multifamily apartments, of which approximately 75% are small studios and one-bedroom units. The project is in the TOD zone, is adjacent to the Savage Mark Station. We believe our project will be beneficial to address several of Howard County concerns. It will alleviate a large housing shortage, as documented by Governor Moore and his housing secretary, Jake Day, last year. It will provide accessible and affordable housing, which is very hard to come by in Howard County. Roughly 650 accessible units will be provided, and there will be 98 affordable units provided in this project. We will provide the missing middle housing, which will be affordable to people making under $100,000, because so many are unable to afford, middle-income people are unable to afford housing in the area. And importantly, there will be a massive revenue stream to Howard County so that it could build new schools, improve existing schools, or to fund other necessary government services. The existing office building on the site now provides tax revenue per year of about $110,000. The proposal that we are looking at proceeding with will average over the next 40 years $4.2 million a year in new tax revenue to Howard County, or $169 million over 40 years. In contrast, the cost of educating the projected 10 students that will live in this 650 units is only about $202,000 per year, based on Howard County's own internal studies. The ratio, therefore, of the new revenue to the new added cost is conservatively well over 10 to 1. So our project will not be a burden on the overall school system. We will be the solution to the overcrowding of the school system. The revenue we will provide Howard County could finance a school in and of it by itself. Just this project could finance a new school in Howard County. In contrast, if we were to build townhomes, there would be 9 times as many students on this same 7-acre parcel. And there would be probably less than half of the overall tax revenue coming to Howard County. This project faces significant headwinds, not the least of which are the existing APFO laws and fees that go with it. The problem with the current APFO legislation is that the earliest we could get a permit approval would be early 2029. And then construction would not be completed until early 2031. Which is 6 years from now. Certainly, that is plenty of time to anticipate and to adjust for any overcrowding in the schools. Under the existing APFO law, it is impossible for us to adequately budget to do a pro forma. We don't even know what our Howard County fees will be at this point, because right now they adjust for inflation, and inflation is all over the map. We don't know if there are going to be tariffs. We don't know if there are going to be massive federal layoffs. We cannot estimate rents that far in advance. And as such, we really can't put together an adequate pro forma to project whether this project even makes sense, which means we can't get debt financing. We can't get equity financing until all those things are nailed down. And APFO delays prohibit us from doing those very things necessary for us to be able to drive this project forward. We are mired in APFO mud and are not moving right now. In addition, the APFO laws cause us significantly added expenses of roughly $4 million, which makes it harder and more burdensome for us to be able to do affordable housing, to provide those 98 units. It hurts our ability to provide missing middle income. The streamlining of the APFO process and the locking in of fees and taxes are necessary next steps for us to be able to proceed with this $200 million project. We are in favor of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. No questions, Ron. Next up, we have Karina Fisher.
Hi, good evening, Karina. You've now been elevated. Feel free to unmute yourself and begin your testimony when you're ready.
Good evening, just making sure you can hear me.
We sure can.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Karina Fisher, and I'm testifying in opposition to Council Bill 18-2025, that has been introduced by Councilmember Christiana Rigby. This legislative effort seeks to exempt TOD residential units from the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance school capacity test. These exemptions would not only be the only residential units that are exempt from the school capacity test, but additional exemptions. The first exemptions were voted in by the prior county council by a majority vote from council members Mary Kay Siggety, John Weinstein, and Greg Fox. The development projects that were approved because of those initial exemptions are coming online now and creating a situation where emergency redistricting is being initiated to avoid dangerous levels of overcrowding in a school that's already at 131.8% capacity, and if left alone, would reach 157.4 capacity by the 2036-2037 school year. So why do we have school capacity tests in the first place? It's to try to avoid overcrowding our schools. That's why they exist. The only reason I'm showing up to testify in opposition is because we should not be pushing development past school tests in overcrowding schools. The fact that people are citing Apfo as reasons why we don't have affordable housing, why we have a wait. Apfo wasn't even in existence until 1992. High schools were the only schools that did not have any Apfo capacity tests until 2018 or 19, when it was finally voted in. Only elementary and middle schools had capacity tests that were at 115%. So until just a few years ago, this county had absolutely no capacity restrictions on any type of development. Everything moved forward, which is why schools like Howard High School reached 140%, why we have over 200 trailers, 250 at this point, all over this county, warehousing thousands of children every single day. The fact that people testify to say that asking for a pause
30 seconds.
in development to help children is ridiculous. If you look at the Apfo capacity chart, as a county, we are at capacity. Middle school is at 103.7%, high school 97.7%, middle schools, high schools, elementary, we are at capacity. And some of these schools are at dangerous levels of capacity with now emergency redistricting. This is a shame, and it's on the backs of kids in this school system while you continue to exploit the school system for profit. Please do not vote for this bill on the backs of these children.
Yes.
Ms. Fisher, I was wondering if you're aware that 145 of those portables are at schools that are marked as open capacity.
And what is your point? Can we get rid of those portables? Can we put all the kids from the portables back in the classrooms in their brick and mortar? Are you saying we're at 100% capacity?
Ms. Fisher?
Are you saying that we don't need
do you-
exemptions because there's no overcrowding in our school system? If that was the case, we wouldn't need your legislative effort to move past the school system's safety net for our children.
Ms. Fisher, I'm simply, Mr. Lubley, in one of our previous work sessions, we discussed portables. And part of the issue is that many schools are using them for programmatic capacity and not necessarily based on overcrowding. So that is just I think it is an
That's
important thing
great,
to
but
understand.
Until we're not using
Please let me finish,
portables
Ms.
to
Fisher.
warehouse overcrowding. No, actually, I'm not.
Okay.
Okay. Our final witness or testifying person is Stephanie Mummert on this CB18. Do we have her?
Yes, Ms. Mummert reached out. She was unable to stay virtual, so she's submitted written testimony to council mail.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.